One of the first examples was the Tariff Act of 1828. The southern states were agricultural. They bought manufactured goods from England. England bought southern cotton. However, infant industries in the Northeast were producing some of the same manufactured goods as England, but they were more expensive than the imports, and they couldn't compete. So, in 1828, Congress imposed a high tariff on the imports. The southern states called this the Tariff of Abominations because it made the English goods too expensive to buy. And when the southern states stopped buying English goods, England stopped buying southern cotton. This devastated the southern economy. Now, it is important to understand that Congress has specific constitutional authority to impose tariffs on imports. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1. But even though the Tariff Act of 1828 was constitutional, it benefited manufacturers in the Northeast at the expense of the South by eliminating the competition. God never gave us the right to be free of competition in business. We will get more on this when we get to the nullification crisis of 1832. How did we get to the socialist regulatory welfare state of today? It was the Fabian socialists, the progressives of the early 1900s, who transformed the federal government into the Frankensteinian monster of today. It benefits some people, welfare parasites, people with government jobs, labor unions, and Obama donors, at the expense of others, and regulates us all so it can protect us from the risks and uncertainties of life and make everything fair. Fabian socialists claim they will meet all our needs and fix all our problems. Poverty, illiteracy, greed, too many children, people who don't like immigrants, accidents at home, accidents at work, working conditions, unfair wages, lack of equal opportunity, overwork, underwork, bad investments, bad food, bad medicine, disease, injury, old age, sickness, and everything else. They claim they will make business and commerce and agriculture fair by having the federal government control it all. They claim the right to determine what is in the public interest by having the federal government and have the federal government implement their conceptions of what advances the public interest. So the federal government was no longer limited by the enumerated powers itemized in the Constitution, but followed the will of the people as expressed by representatives in the federal government. The federal government usurped a blank check to fill out any way they want. The regulatory welfare state is immoral and is destructive of the hallowed purpose for which the federal government was created. God never gave us the right to have governments give us an advantage over others, to be free of the challenges of life, to be protected from the consequences of our own actions, and to have others forced to pay our living expenses and subsidize our vices. So the progressive's conception of civil government is morally defective. In order to be the provider of benefits to some, the federal government must violate the God-given property rights of others. It must rob Peter to redistribute to Paul. in order to protect us from the risks and uncertainties of life, including made-up problems such as global warming and lack of medical insurance, it must violate everyone's God-given rights to liberty. Today, the federal government exercises vast powers not delegated in the Constitution, has become an instrument of oppression, injustice, and immorality, and has taken away most of our God-given rights and is conniving to take away our God-given right of self-defense. The federal government was transformed from being the securer of our God-given rights to a weapon used to oppress some of the people for the benefit of other people and to take everyone's liberty away except for those in the ruling class. So what can we do? Does the creature dictate to the Creator? Who created Congress? Who created the executive branch? Who created the judicial branch? We did. Does the creature dictate to the Creator? The nullification deniers say yes. They say every law made by Congress, the legislative branch of the federal government, is supreme. And every executive order issued by the President and every word in the code of federal regulations, the executive branch of the federal government, is binding. And the member states and we, the people, must obey unless and until 5 judges on the Supreme Court, the judicial branch of the federal government, say the law or executive order or agency rule is unconstitutional. In other words, only the federal government may question the federal government, and no one may question the Supreme Court. They insist that the federal government, created by the Constitution, is the exclusive and final judge of the extent of its powers, and the opinion of 5 judges is the sole measure of its powers. The nullification deniers repudiate our founding principles. They would return us to the authoritarian governments which plagued Europe for 1,000 years, and we in this country would be ruled by 5. But our framers said, the federal government is merely our creature, and each branch is to obey our will, as enshrined in this. Thomas Jefferson said in the Kentucky Resolutions of 1798, 8th Resolution, and these are among my favorite words, when powers are assumed which have not been delegated, a nullification of the act is the rightful remedy, that every state has a natural right, in cases not within the compact, to nullify of their own authority all assumptions of power by others within their limits, that without this right, they would be under the dominion, absolute and unlimited, of whosoever might exercise this right of judgment for them. James Madison commented on this in his Notes on Nullification, 1834. The right of nullification meant by Mr. Jefferson is the natural right which all admit to be a remedy against insupportable oppression. Alexander Hamilton said in Federalist Paper number 28, the last 5 paragraphs, I'm condensing it, quote, "If the representatives of the people betray their constituents, then there is no recourse left but in the exertion of that original right of self-defense, which is paramount to all positive forms of government, and which, against the usurpations of the national rulers, may be exerted by the state governments, which will afford complete security against invasions of the public liberty by the national authority."
Yeah.